Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I am here with one of my very favorite speakers. If you've been here before, you know it, Jeremy D'Entremont, who's going to be talking about the flying Santas. I think it has something to do with lighthouses, but I don't even care because I know that Jeremy's going to entertain us no matter what. So he has a special guest, like I said, Dolly Bicknell, who he's going to tell you all about in a minute. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs, as well as Jeremy for letting us share this program with other libraries, because of course, you all know this, when libraries work together, we make magic. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your screen. I love the hearts. Thank you so much. And I will be turning the chat off during Jeremy's slides, so you can chat to me or to Jeremy or to Dolly during his slides, but they won't go out to everybody. If you don't like those emojis, which I'm like, what's not to like? There's a button at the bottom of your screen called React, and you can turn them off. So Jeremy D'Entremont, he's my lighthouse expert. He knows everything about them, even the paranormal aspects of them. But today he's talking about flying Santas. And I would like to know, Jeremy, all about Dolly. Tell us about yourself and Dolly and what we're going to be talking about.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mina. It's always a pleasure. What is this, 5 or 6 times I've spoken for
I've
the
stopped
National
counting,
Library?
but I also know that I'll be talking to you later about the next one.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's become a tradition, so always nice to do it. My good friend Dolly is here, and I'm very happy you can join us, Dolly. Some people in the audience probably know who Edward Rowe Snow was, but if not, they'll find out in my presentation tonight. And Dolly is the daughter of Edward Rowe Snow, the great historian of the New England coast and longtime flying Santa, as I'll be telling you. And Dolly had many years. Well, I shouldn't say many years. Not implying anything there, but of flying Santa experience that maybe you can share with us a little bit. I'm thinking. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us, Dolly. Nice to see you.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Mina, too.
Absolutely. And I feel like, Jeremy, you told me there was somebody in the audience who's also on the board of the Flying Santas.
Yeah, I believe I can't see the names of who's in the audience, but I believe our friend, Dolly and our mutual friend Sally Snowman is in the audience.
Yep, she is.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Sally, some people may know, she was the longtime keeper of Boston Light for 20 years. She retired at the end of 2023, I believe. And the only woman keeper in the history of Boston Light, but also a board member until I believe she's stepped off the board just lately, but a longtime board member of the Friends of Flying Santa, so has a long history with it as well. So nice to have Sally here. So at the end, we'll have a little time for Q&A, I believe. Is that right, Mina?
Yeah.
And Dolly, I want to invite Dolly in, and Sally. Sally could answer questions via chat, right, if there's anything that's directed at her. So great to have them both here. So I think we should probably get into my presentation.
All right. Dolly and I are going to go off screen, and if you need us, we'll be around.
Okay. All right. Hopefully I don't need you until until the end of my talk. I will mention that Mina and Dolly know that I had a little technical issue, but I think I'm okay. So just keep all my fingers and toes crossed. We should be fine. All right. So here we go. All right. Hopefully everybody's seeing my screen on their screens.
Looking good.
And are you hearing sound?
Yes.
Is it very faint, or is it fairly good volume?
It's faint for me.
It is faint. Here we go. How's that?
Much
Is that
better.
a little better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. When we get to some sound clips that have voices, I'll try to make sure everybody can hear it. Okay. So just by way of introduction here, the Flying Santa is something I've been involved with for quite a few years now. I feel very lucky to be part of the tradition, playing a small part in the tradition, really. But anyway, tonight I'm going to give you a crash course in almost 100 years, 96 years of Flying Santa history. There are other Santa Clauses in the country who fly via helicopter and that kind of thing. but there's no tradition that I'm aware of that has such a long, history going back almost 100 years and such a rich history. There's so many great stories, and I'll tell you some of them tonight. So I'm starting at the beginning here. Usually a good place to start. And a man by the name of Bill Wincapaw was the founder of the Flying Santa tradition, and here he is. Captain William H. Wincapaw was a pioneering aviator, adventurer, and the founder of the Flying Santa program. He was born in 1885. He was a native of Friendship, Maine, in the mid-coast. He was nicknamed Captain not because he was a pilot, but because he sailed yachts and other vessels as a young man, and got the nickname Captain because of that, rather than his flying. He started flying in 1911. He was a civilian instructor during World War I. And after the war, he started flying seaplanes out of New York. He returned to Maine and started the Maine Air Transport Company in Rockland in the mid-coast, and he supervised the construction of a seaplane ramp in Rockland Harbor. He flew mostly amphibious airplanes. This one is a 1928 Ireland amphiplane, I'm told. And I should mention, while I'm thinking of it, that my good friend Brian Tague is the longtime president of Friends of Flying Santa. He wanted to be here tonight. He's not able to be here. But I only know the names of some of these airplanes because he's told me, because he knows aircraft a lot better than I do. So anyway, this is a 1928 Ireland amphiplane. Excuse me. And Bill Wincapaw, as I don't know if you can read any of this clipping here, but it tells about him and other pilots on the Maine coast flying people to medical facilities. He would fly sick and injured islanders in the Penobscot Bay area to hospitals, and he saved many lives doing that. By 1929, he was overseeing operations of the Curtiss Flying Service of the Rockland Airfield and the nearby seaplane base. At night and in bad weather, he often relied on lighthouses to help him get to his destinations. In some versions, some places, if you read about the history of the Flying Santa, it will say that he saw the gleam of a lighthouse called Dice Head Light on the Maine coast one time during a snowstorm. That helped him get back to his home base. It's not totally clear whether that's a strictly true story or not, but whether or not that really happened, it was kind of emblematic of how he would use the lighthouses to get home. And often the keepers would watch for him to pass by. They would relay word to the airfield that he was on the way. He got to know many of the keepers, and he would visit them sometimes. He got to know them personally. So here's a rare picture of Bill Wincapaw with a Santa beard. He didn't normally do that, but on this particular occasion, he was wearing quite a luxurious beard there. On Christmas Day, 1929, he loaded his plane with about a dozen packages containing newspapers, magazines, coffee, candy, and other items, and he dropped those presents, those packages, at lighthouses in the Rockland area as a gesture of gratitude to the keepers and their families. He, again, was very personally grateful to them, but just wanted to recognize them for the very important work they were doing in service of navigation. The flights got a great reaction from the keepers. He expanded the flights in the following years to more of the Maine coast and to the other New England states. And soon he was dropping presents at around 25 lighthouses. And actually, this clipping says 30 lighthouses. I'm not sure what year that was. But by the early 30s, it was up to around 30 lighthouses. Bill Whoops, sorry. Sorry, I threw myself off a little bit. The slides are in slightly different order. The planes you're seeing in the last picture and in this one, it says La Touraine Coffee. I'll just mention that the W.S. Quimby Company out of Boston was a longtime sponsor of the flights. And La Touraine Coffee and Bickford's Restaurants were part of the Quimby family of companies. So this is another clipping, in this particular one, 23 stations. So generally 25, 30 stations in those days. And Bill Jr., you see Bill Jr. on the left in this picture. Bill Wincapaw Jr. started flying with his father, or at least riding with his father, when he was 4 years old. But by the time he was 11, he was piloting planes himself. Not by himself. He had to have somebody with him, and he wasn't a licensed pilot yet. But he was behind the controls by the time he was 11. He got licensed a few years later, as I'll tell you shortly. But he was quite a flying prodigy, I would say. So the picture on the right was a lighthouse keeper by the name of Arthur Mitchell at the Fort Point Lighthouse in Stockton Springs, Maine, near the mid-coast area. And this article is from 1932, and in the article, Arthur Mitchell thanks the Flying Santa, and I'll read you what he said. He said, quote, "We thank you for remembering us again this year. The bundle of papers and magazines landed very near our mailbox. Our dog was the first to hear the sound of the motor, and then we all rushed out in time to see the plane circle over the reservation and go sailing down the Penobscot again," unquote. And also a keeper named N.B. Pickett from Pond Island Lighthouse in the same general area wrote, quote, "We received the bundle of papers from out of the air. There are just my wife and myself on here, and it gets lonely sometimes, so you can see that we were pleased with the reading," unquote. Here are Captain Wincapaw and his son Bill Jr. loading up the La Touraine plane around the mid-1930s. The Wincapaws moved to Winthrop, Massachusetts, right on Boston Harbor in 1933. Their flights by then were going to as many as 91 lighthouses and Coast Guard stations. Bill Jr. was helping, as you can see here, on the flights. And in 1934, Bill Jr. became the youngest licensed pilot in Massachusetts at the age of 16. He flew some of the route that Christmas and flew on his own to some of the lighthouses the following year. And again, you see La Touraine Coffee. In that picture, the plane is passing Boston Light in outer Boston Harbor, oldest light station in America. So here is kind of a publicity picture of Captain Bill at the controls, and Bill Jr. As the bombardier in this particular picture, which is from 1936. And I love this picture. It looks like Bill Sr. and Jr. look like they're out of a movie like Casablanca or something. This was taken sometime in the late 1930s by Alton Hall Blackington, who's also known as Boston Blackie, who, in addition to being a great photographer, was a radio personality and told stories about New England history and legends and things like that. Another great picture, the Flying Santa plane passing Boston Light in 1936, and Graves Light, just a couple of miles from Boston Light in outer Boston Harbor, also 1936. Bickford's, as I mentioned before, Bickford's another part of the Quimby family of companies. So a lot of the early Santa planes had Bickford's or La Touraine on them. Here we are loading up the plane again for a flight, the Bickford's plane. And on the upper right, you see Captain Bill and Bill Jr. with some women there. There was a newspaper article that said the packages that year weighed 16 pounds each, and that they were wrapped at a Boston warehouse by a dozen Boston society girls. So I guess those are some of the society girls there. Coffee, cookies, silk hose, magazines, almanacs, candy, cigarettes, and a book were some of the things in the packages. And I am going to move on at this point to the Edward Rowe Snow years. And you see that there is some overlap between the Wincapaw years and the Snow years, as I'll explain. So this is Edward Rowe Snow. He was born in Winthrop, Mass. In 1902. He became one of the most popular historians and storytellers of the New England coast. He wrote about 40 full-length books and many shorter ones, well over 100 if you count them all. His first book was Islands of Boston Harbor in 1935. After he got involved in the Santa program, he usually included his latest book in the Santa packages. Edward Rowe Snow was teaching history at Winthrop High School in the 1930s, and Bill Wincapaw Jr. had him as a teacher. In 1936, Edward Rowe Snow flew with Bill Jr. to 25 stops in southern New England, while Bill Sr. flew the northern route. Adriel U. Bird, the president of the Quimby Company, the big sponsor, flew on one of the flights that year. And here he is as Santa, demonstrating his bombardiering technique. Although I don't think the door would be open quite so much when he was dropping a present out. Maybe Dolly can clarify that later. Or maybe it was in those days. Maybe he did happen to have to open the door. I'm not quite sure. We can talk about that a little later. This is circa 1938. In 1938, Bill Wincapaw Sr. flew to Bolivia to fly gold and mining equipment, and Edward Rowe Snow made the flights that year with Bill Jr. And he returned Bill Senior returned the following year, and this picture is kind of interesting. He looks like Albert Einstein or something. I think he's just got a Santa wig on there. I don't think his hair actually looked like that, but he did return, and again, Edward Rowe Snow and the Wincapaws were kind of sharing the flights in those days. And here is a great picture of Edward Rowe Snow and his wife, Anna Merle, Dolly's mother. Anna Merle flew for the first time in 1940, flew with her husband just about every time after that. That was also the first year a company called Wiggins Airways became involved, and they provided the planes many times over the next 60 years. I should clarify that Edward Rowe Snow was not a pilot. Every year he would hire a plane, a couple of times a helicopter, as I'll talk about, but usually a plane, and the pilot. He would pay for those himself. So he was never a pilot himself. This is from 1940. This is Edward Rowe Snow was flying on the Massachusetts coast, and this is 10-Pound Island Lighthouse in Gloucester Harbor, Cape Ann. And you can see in both pictures that Merry Christmas is spelled out near the lighthouse and keeper's house. By the way, pretty much everything's gone there now except for the lighthouse itself. The other buildings were torn down. But anyway, there was a keeper there at the time named Edward Hopkins. And the story goes, and I wasn't there, so I can't verify this is exactly the way it happened, but the way I've heard it is that Keeper Hopkins was sitting in the afternoon by the kitchen stove on a cold day, reading a magazine, keeping warm, and it was near Christmas, and the Flying Santa was due to fly over that day. And his wife told him, we got to do something special for the Flying Santa. And I guess he kind of grunted at her. So she went out and she nailed down newspapers to spell out Merry Christmas, as you can see here. Well, a little while later, Edward Rowe Snow flew over 10-Pound Island and took these pictures. He landed back in Boston and handed the film to somebody who immediately got it to, I think, the Boston Globe. It was picked up by the AP, and it actually ran in newspapers that very same evening. And the Hopkins' son was on the mainland and rode back that evening with the newspaper with this picture in it. I think it was on the front page. And supposedly Mrs. Hopkins tiptoed over and put the newspaper in front of her husband. And I guess he was pretty surprised, probably to say the least. So the Santa was grounded during the war years. Edward Rowe Snow was he was a reconnaissance photographer in North Africa during the war. He was wounded. Bill Jr. served in the Navy, and also during the war, Bill Sr. became chief of maintenance at the Quonset Naval Air Station in Rhode Island. Edward Rowe Snow returned and flew as Santa in 1943, as you see here. Okay, this is a little girl named Simond Ponsart. And she became a good friend. I knew her for a long time. She just passed away last year. But Simond was the daughter of a keeper at Cuttyhunk Lighthouse. Some of you may know Cuttyhunk Island is at the end of a chain of islands called the Elizabeth Islands off of Falmouth on Cape Cod. And the lighthouse was torn down a little bit later in the 1940s. But Simon lived there with her parents. Her father, Octave Ponsart, was the keeper there. In 1945, Edward Rowe Snow dropped a doll, a special doll he had picked out for her. And the package containing the doll sadly hit a rock when he dropped it, and the doll was broken. And Simond was so excited about the Flying Santa. This is the sad part of the story. It gets a lot better, but she was so sad to see the doll was broken. Her father tried to mend it. I think he put his arm in a sling or something like that. But she cried herself to sleep that night. But her mother, I believe it was, contacted Edward Rowe Snow and told him what had happened. And he said, well, that won't do. So he decided the following year to actually hire a helicopter. It was the first time a helicopter was hired for the Flying Santa, a Sikorsky S-51 Dragonfly. So this is 1946. By that time, the Ponsarts had moved to West Chop Lighthouse on Martha's Vineyard, and he flew to Martha's Vineyard and landed so that he could hand a doll to Simond Ponsart. And this is a video clip, a silent video clip I'm going to play here. of some of the helicopter flight that year. You're going to see West Chop Lighthouse, but actually he met them at Gay Head on the western end of Martha's Vineyard. And they met at there's a lighthouse there, but also there was a life-saving station. I believe the present was handed to Seamons at the life-saving station. That's West Chop Lighthouse, where they lived, but I guess there wasn't enough room to land the helicopter there. So that is at the life-saving station at Gay Head, and there is Santa Edward Rowe Snow handing the doll to 4-year-old Seamond Ponsart, with her father behind her and her mother over there on the right, and I believe a family from the life-saving station there. And there's West Chop Lighthouse again. I guess they did land briefly at West Chop, but anyway, that's the life-saving station. There's the Gay Head Lighthouse. So that is one of the great moments in Flying Santa history right there. And here is a picture again of, here's another video version of it. And that great still picture of that great moment in Flying Santa history. All right, so moving along, in 1946, the Wincapaws flew the northern route, while the Snows flew the southern route. On July 16, 1947, Bill Wincapaw suffered a heart attack shortly after taking off from Rockland Harbor. His Cub cruiser seaplane plunged into the harbor, and he and his 20-year-old passenger both died. Wincapaw was 62, and that was huge news on the Maine coast. A memorial service was attended by lighthouse keepers, their families, island residents, and representatives of the Coast Guard, Army, and Navy. At 2 o'clock as the service began, foghorns and bells were sounded all around the Penobscot Bay region in his memory. That year, 1947, Edward Rowe Snow became the sole flying Santa. During his main flight as Santa, he dropped a wreath in Rockland Harbor in memory of Captain Wincapaw. And that year, Snow and his wife, Anna Merle, visited 176 lighthouses from Canada to Florida. So the flights generally were in the New England region, but they did sometimes go well outside of New England, on rare occasions all the way to the West Coast, sometimes to the Great Lakes, sometimes down the coast as far as Florida. I think Bermuda, again, Dolly could fill some of this in, but Eastern Canada, Nova Scotia, St. Pierre and Miquelon, Quebec, and various places. So it wasn't strictly within New England. And there's Dolly, and this is in their Marshfield home. So Edward Rowe Snow, again, was born and lived much of his life in Winthrop, Massachusetts. But in 1950, they moved to Marshfield, and that's where Dolly was born. And that is the basement of their home, circa probably, I'm going to say, late 1950s. And Dolly has told me that the ping pong table in the basement became Flying Santa Central, so there was no ping pong playing in the Christmas season. That's where the packages were assembled. Maybe Dolly can tell us a little bit about the specifics in a while. But great picture of Edward and Anna Merle and Dolly loading up the Santa plane. Probably 1960-ish, I would guess. And I'm going to play you a clip here. And I'm trying to, again, I had a slight technical problem, so the presentation I'm showing you is a little slightly different from what I was planning on. So I'm trying to think of what this clip is. Let me just start it here.
Daughter Dorothy.
Okay, I'm going to back up here for a second. So this is a video clip from the 1980s, and I'm sure a lot of you remember Charles Kuralt, who did the On the Road segments for CBS News. And he did a segment on the Flying Santa, and you're going to see Dolly in the segment. And I'm hoping that the sound is going to be loud enough to be heard okay. I'm actually just going to come out of the presentation just for a moment here.
Daughter Dorothy will never.
See if I can turn up the sound anymore. No, it's up all the way. So I hope you're going to be able to hear this. Okay.
Daughter Dorothy will never forget the thrill.
You know, it would just be very windy and noisy, and you'd go along and you'd see him go right out the window like that, and then again, and then he'd say, "They got it, they got it!" And he'd be so excited. And my mother would say, "Now, Edward, don't lose your hat. Come back in here."
Thank you for the things you sent down. I wish I could have seen the package fall.
Anna Merle Snow has kept all the letters from Halfway Rock and Monhegan, Cuttyhunk and Nantucket, from children in lonely places.
I saw you drop the package over Eastern Point Light, and I was the one who got it. I bet you make a lot of children happy. I am 14, and even I enjoyed it.
Mrs. Snow remembers watching the young bride of the lightkeeper at remote Gurnet Light off Plymouth.
She was out there, and it was her first year married, and she was so lonesome. And when she saw the plane coming, she ran out, and she danced up and down, and then when the package landed, you could see her feet going. She was running as fast as she could to get it, and she held it up way over her head, and you could just feel the joy that she had at that lighthouse. It really was very nice. And it made us feel good, too, you know.
So I hope you could hear that okay. I'm afraid the sound might have been a little faint, but hopefully you could turn up your sound. Edward Rowe Snow for many years would include a self-addressed card in the packages that the keepers could send to him to let I see somebody giving the thumbs up, so I guess you could hear it okay. Thanks. So he would include these self-addressed cards in the packages so the keepers could let him know that they received the packages okay. This particular one, that's Matinicus Rock Light Station off Midcoast, Maine, more than 20 miles off the mainland. And it was a twin light station. You can see the top of one of the lighthouses was removed, but really one of the most remote places and remote lighthouses in the country. And I should just mention that a lot of you know this, but lighthouse keepers were civilians under the old lighthouse service, and then in 1939 the Coast Guard took over management of lighthouses, and gradually the civilian keepers retired. So in later years it was pretty much Coast Guard. So this is from a Coast Guard keeper at Matinicus Rock, Jack O'Berry. I won't read the whole thing, but I like the part where he says, "It makes me feel happy to know there is still some kind people left in this crazy world today. I'm sure you're one of the most kindest of them all," etc. And this one's from an even more remote lighthouse, Mount Desert Rock, which is like 26 miles from the nearest port in the Acadia region, way down east. I've been on that island. You feel like you're on another planet when you're out there. But anyway, this is from Ralph Demmons, the officer in charge for the Coast Guard there. He said, "We received the package, or rather found it today, February 22nd, in a crevice between the rocks. Dried it out. Nearly everything in it was usable and readable. Thanks. Thought you might be interested to know someone did a real job of packing for this package to withstand the elements and seas breaking over it for so long a time." This is from Ozzie Hallett. That picture on the right, the group there, that's Ozzie Hallett, the keeper at Race Point Lighthouse on the left in that group. He was a lighthouse keeper at a number of places, but he was at Race Point for quite a few years at the tip of Cape Cod in Provincetown. And he said, "Found your package today about a mile northeast of here. One of the keepers, taking a shortcut with the Jeep, came upon it. It was pretty well wet and frozen, but we're drying out the books and they'll be okay." So Edward Rowe Snow claims something I think I've heard different numbers, but I think it was about 92% accuracy with the package drops. It was less accurate at some of the places like the ones on ledges like Minus Light off the south side of Boston Harbor. At those places, he actually devised a system of tying a package to each end of a long rope and trying to sort of drape it over the lighthouse as he flew over. So his accuracy at those places was a lot less, but pretty good overall. But obviously from these cards, the packages didn't always land exactly where they were supposed to, but there were some funny stories about the keepers finding them later. This is Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse you see on the bottom there at Coast Guard Station Portsmouth Harbor. There's also an old fort there, Fort Constitution. That's about 15 minutes from where I'm sitting at home here. And the Coast Guard had just moved in there and made that their station in 1948. So it was a brand new Coast Guard station. And Jordan Orr, the officer in charge, sent him the card to tell him the package landed right next to the lighthouse. So that was a really good shot. And this is Scituate Light on the south shore of Boston. There's a Coast Guard station near there. It's not, the lighthouse isn't actually at the Coast Guard station, but this is from the officer in charge at the station. And 1967, he says, "The crew and myself thank you very much. The station dogs Caesar and Wimpy. Also wish to thank you for the Gainsburgers you sent them." You can see he wrote dog package on it. If there were pets at the Coast Guard stations or lighthouses, they were often recipients of presents as well. And this is a really neat story. This is Whaleback Lighthouse. This is another one very close to where I live here. It's at the mouth of the Piscataqua River, basically the entrance to Portsmouth, New Hampshire harbor, but it's the southernmost Maine lighthouse. It's just over the border in Maine. And the keepers lived inside the tower here. And his first drop this one year in 1948, or I think it was 47, Christmas of 47, missed and started floating out to sea, and the keepers weren't able to retrieve it. Well, about 3 weeks later, a man was walking the beach in Sandwich on Cape Cod, a man named E.S. Clark, as you see there, and he found the package 90 miles from where it had been dropped. And years later, he still had the book that was in the package, Edward Rowe Snow's Storms and Shipwrecks of New England. And you can see that's all that was left of the card that he sent back to Mr. Snow, and he wrote, "Please be careful, this floated 90 miles." This is Sankaty Headlight on Nantucket from a magazine article. Great picture of the Flying Santa plane going by there. Boston Light in the 1950s. Beautiful old duplex house that was demolished in the early 1960s. It's not there anymore. But you see one of the Coast Guard guys holding the package over his head, and they spelled out Merry Christmas on the ground there. This is a newsreel clip. It's really quick. I'm going to play this for you. This is from 1959.
'Twas the day before Christmas when the New England coast awaited Ed Snow, who was taking his post as the Santa he'd played for 25 years, each and every December as Yuletide came near.
Okay, and another great picture of the Snow family at the Flying Santa plane. And yet another one. I think this is a really great picture. Dolly could probably pinpoint this, but I would guess 1963, 4-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe a little later than that. And this is a video clip from, I believe, 1965, and that's Dolly there. And because Edward Rowe Snow lived so close to Boston Light, he would sometimes visit there in person in the Christmas season, and that's what's happening here. And you're going to see that man right there. Some of you may know who Ken Black was. That's Ken Black, who was also known as Mr. Lighthouse. He was the officer in charge or the commander of Station Point Allerton, the whole Boston Harbor area there at the time. And that is a lighthouse keeper at Boston Light named Bill Wincapaw, who was there then. And you can see some of the dogs and the long history of dogs at Boston Light. Sally Snowman certainly knows a lot about that. She had a great friend, a dog there. And it was like there's a puppy there that Dolly made friends with. Again, Ken Black, who you saw, there he is there too. That's Ken Black. Was a longtime Coast Guard officer who started the Maine Lighthouse Museum. He started collecting artifacts like Fresnel lenses and other artifacts, literally from the trash heap. He rescued them, and eventually they became the what is now the Maine Lighthouse Museum in Rockland. So, okay, this is probably a little bit later in the 70s, and that is again Sankaty Headlight in Nantucket. And you see there's a special window on the plane in this picture, like a plexiglass window that was installed in this plane. And you see Admiral Snow's hand behind Edward there holding the window open. It flipped inward so that he could easily drop the presents out and then close it again. And I actually did a lecture about, I'm going to say at least 10 years ago now, maybe 15, in Norwell, Massachusetts, and a man in the audience at the end came up and gave me that window. He worked at the airport at that time, and he saved it, and that is now in the historical collection of the Flying Santa. I hope there'll be a Flying Santa museum someday, but anyway, the organization now owns that actual window there. And here is Edward Rowe Snow in a larger plane that was used this particular year. Whoops. Okay, again, I'm throwing myself off a little bit because the presentation I'm actually showing you is slightly different than the one I had planned on. It's very close, but anyway, I'm going to play you a clip here. This is a radio clip from a show called Contact. Anybody who lives in the Boston area of a certain age might remember in the 60s there was both a radio and TV program called Contact, hosted by Bob Kennedy. No relation to Robert Kennedy Sr. or Jr., the other ones, but Bob Kennedy, radio host, and you're going to hear an interview with Edward Rowe Snow near Christmas with Bob Kennedy talking to him.
It's a rather cold, kind of snowy morning here at Norwood Airport, and the gentleman standing next to me looks like Santa Claus. In fact, kind of a special Santa Claus, a flying Santa Claus. And as I look a little closer, it kind of looks like a fellow we know very well here on Contact, Ed Rowe Snow. How are you, Ed? And kind of a little early Merry Christmas to you.
I'm very happy to be here, and I'm feeling pretty good, and Merry Christmas to you, Bob.
Ed Rowe Snow, I thought you mainly stayed aboard or near the sea. How come the airplane and how come the flying Santa Claus?
Well, we fly out over the sea in this plane, and we will leave in just a few moments. We will cover about 1,600 miles today and go down into Maryland as our greatest objective of the day. Also, we will stop at Martha's Vineyard. We will stop at Nantucket Island. We will stop at Block Island. And meanwhile, as we go to and from those various airports, we will drop from our plane about 112 bundles.
Ed Snow, how long have you been the flying Santa?
My first year was 1936, and I've been doing it every year except one when I was in the North African invasion. So this will be the 27th trip.
So it was 1963, that clip. I like being able to, to have you hear his voice, because he had such a great voice. He was a great storyteller. I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts, and loved to hear him on radio and see him on TV and listen to his stories. And I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be involved in, I don't think, in any of this if it wasn't for his inspiration. So I blame it all on him. 1980, WCVB Channel 5 did a news segment on the Flying Santa, and I'm going to play you a little clip of him talking about the packages.
In the old days, we had cigars, cigarette, candy, chewing gum, pen and pencil sets, a doll, if there are kids in the family, and a copy of my latest book, which is now my 96th book.
And a very brief clip of him talking about why he didn't wear a beard anymore as the Flying Santa.
It has cost us over $100 every time I stick my head out of the window. Goes the beard.
Okay, and there, Edward and Anna Merle, sometime in the 1970s. And moving along here, the Hull Lifesaving Museum years. And Edward Rowe Snow had a stroke. The last time he flew as Santa was 1980. And he had a stroke and was in the hospital at the time of the following year's flights. So the director of a museum, the Hull Lifesaving Museum, just south of Boston in the town of Hull, contacted Mrs. Snow, Anna Merle Snow, and asked, would it be okay if we do the flights this year? And of course she said, absolutely, please do it. So this is at Logan Airport. There was a little ceremony. You see Dolly on the right there, putting the hat on the head of Ed McCabe from the Hull Lifesaving Museum. I'm not sure who the man on the far left is, but anyway, Ed was one of the first Santas for the Hull Lifesaving Museum, and you notice he's got a good beard for Santa, but it's not quite the right color. What we usually think of as a usual Santa beard. And the story goes that when he would go to the places to give the presents to the kids, and by this time it became all helicopter, by the way, they would say, "Why is Santa's beard black?" And he would tell them that Santa's beard turns white on Christmas Eve. So that I guess they bought it. And here's Ed with one of the helicopter pilots in the early 1980s. I should mention that when they first took over, they only had about a month to pull together that year's flights, and they had 3 helicopters donated by different donors that year. And here is a greeting spelled out to Santa from at Chatham Light. So to make a long story short here, the Hull Lifesaving Museum did the flights for about 16 years. There were a number of volunteers who helped with them. There was a man named George Morgan who was the volunteer Santa for a number of those years. And they kept the tradition going. But of course, in those days, in the 1980s, the lights were being automated. And by 1990, only Boston Light still had a resident keeper. So things had changed quite a bit, but things were shifting toward basically making the Flying Santa flights into a means to to show gratitude to Coast Guard families. And that's what it's really become in more recent years. And Edward Rowe Snow passed away in 1982. So these pictures are now moving into the Friends of Flying Santa era, which started in 1997. This is Annisquam Light in Gloucester. You can see welcome spelled out the snow there, and Boston Light again, and Nobsca Light on Cape Cod. Warwick Light in Rhode Island, near Civil Engineering Unit, Providence. They had a bunch of Coast Guard families there. And Montauk Light on Long Island, New York. All right, so again, Flying Santa, Friends of Flying Santa, founded in 1997. The Hull Lifesaving Museum, loved being involved, but they have other missions, a lot they're doing. It's a great museum. So it was just decided, everybody agreed it'd be better to form a separate nonprofit organization. And I mentioned earlier my friend Brian Tagg, that's Tague. Brian was the official photographer from the Flying Santa when he first got involved, and then became the president of the new organization, the Friends of Flying Santa. And this is one of the great pictures he's taken of the helicopter by Portland Headlight in Maine. And this particular picture was kind of adapted into the Flying Santa logo. Brian has taken many thousands of great aerial photos on these flights, and he just does so much work to keep these flights going. That's why this is getting into his really busy season at this point. He's incredibly busy pulling the flights together for this year. This is a number of people have been Santas. I hope there's no children watching. If so, you have to explain to them that these are flying Santas, but not the Santa. Maybe you can clarify that to them. But a number of volunteers have been Santa for Friends of Flying Santa. This is Dave Waldrop, who started flying in the 1990s, was in Alaska for a while, came back and flew some more. He did it quite a few times. This is Santa Tom Guthline. Both Dave Waldrop and Tom Guthline are retired Chief Warrant Officers in the Coast Guard. And Tom first flew in 1997. He had been Executive Petty Officer of Station Gloucester, and he and his family actually lived in Annisquam Lighthouse in Gloucester. So he saw firsthand how much it meant to the families. And he, as Santa, he once visited Annisquam Light while his family was still living there, and gave presents to his own kids, and they didn't realize it was him. So he knew he had made it as Santa, that he was a good Santa when his own kids didn't recognize him. And this is Dave Considine, another retired Coast Guard Chief Warrant Officer who has been Santa a number of times in recent years. On the upper right there, you see Santa with Brian Tagg, the president of Friends of Flying Santa, on the left, and Dolly in the middle. And Dolly, it looks like you're kneeling down, I think, there or something, because you're quite a bit taller than that. But anyway, that is the Edward Rowe Snow Memorial on George's Island in Boston Harbor in that picture. Nice memorial by a picnic pavilion there on George's Island. And these pictures were taken on Edward Rowe Snow Day. I'm not sure how many years ago. It's at least 10 years ago, I would say now. The man with Santa, Dave Considine, on the left there is my good friend, the late John Forbes, a volunteer for the Friends of Boston Harbor Islands. And it was a really nice group, and Santa arrived and handed out candy canes to the kids, and they got to tell them what they wanted for Christmas. But again, this was Christmas in July, and that I felt bad for Dave wearing that suit on a hot July day. And this is give me a second here. Bill Donahue. Sorry, another retired Coast Guard Chief Warrant Officer, Bill Donahue, has also been Santa some of the recent flights. And sometimes I can't tell, and sometimes I'll say to Brian, "Okay, which Santa is this?" And he'll say, "Well, it's Santa. What are you talking about? It's Santa. Santa is Santa." So I'll just say that this is Santa, because it's hard with that beard and everything. It's a little hard to tell. This is, I think this in this case was the Santa Dave Waldrop with Dale Hardy, who was a pilot, really great pilot for the Coast Guard for many years, and it's at Highland Light on Cape Cod. And I got to meet Dale Hardy, and I got to fly to Boston Light with him, or to Graves Light, I should say, although we flew over Boston Light in 2001. And he knew just where to, on the way back, he knew just where to take the helicopter to give me the best possible pictures of Boston Light with the skyline behind it. So just a fantastic pilot, great guy. And two of the helicopter pilots it's probably about 15 years ago, something like that. That is Lorraine Todd and Art Gudjikian, and I believe that was for a company called Fisher Scientific. And I should point out that in recent years, under the Friends of Flying Santa, the helicopters themselves, the fuel and everything, all the costs, and the pilots, it's all been donated by various companies. And if Brian was here, he could tell you a lot more about that because he's got great relationships with these companies. He's really fostered those, and for these pilots, it's one of their favorite things, if not the favorite thing they do all year. They love being involved. You can see how Lorray on the left there was really, that's not his actual nose, in case you were wondering. He was really, really into the whole thing. So it's really a lot of fun for them, and it's hard work. About I think it was 2012, I think. I flew all day on the Massachusetts flight. We left Norwood Airport pre-dawn. It was pitch dark out, and then we arrived after sunset that night. And it was a long day. All I did was sit in the back seat and get out at the stops and take some pictures and get back in. But I was exhausted. The pilot, and it was only one pilot on that flight, and Santa and Brian, who's in the helicopter, they worked hard that day. All I did was sit there, and I was exhausted. So I've got to see how hard these people work. And at some of the stops, if there's time, the kids get to have a brief tour of Santa's sleigh, as you can see there. These pictures are from 2003, and that is West Chop Lighthouse. So I showed you before Simone Ponsard at Cuttyhunk, and then her family moved to West Chop Lighthouse. That is Simone in the blue or purple cloak there. She flew along that year, 2003, on the Massachusetts flight as an elf. And helped out on the flight that day, and I actually took the ferry over to Martha's Vineyard to meet them there, and she was so happy to have the chance to hand out presents to the Coast Guard kids there. So I don't think I've really clarified it, but again, in more recent years, all the flights have been by helicopter. They land at the stations, Santa gets out, everything's all prearranged, so the Santa has the names and everything. And he hands out presents to the kids. And under the Friends of Flying Santa, there's really nice toys, things like, stuffed animals sometimes, but remote control helicopters and cars and things. They're very carefully selected toys. Excuse me. They are not donated, but Brian does a great job of hunting for good toys at the best possible price. Anyway, just wanted to clarify some of that. And this is that same year, Simond on the left there with Dolly, and they had corresponded for years, but this, I believe, was the first time they ever met in person, so that was pretty neat. And on the right there, Brian Tagg and Simond Ponsart Roberts and Dolly Snow Bicknell. And this, I mentioned that Sally Snowman is in our audience tonight, too, the keeper of Boston Light for 20 years. And in the early 2000s, I introduced Sally to Connie Small on the left there. Connie was the wife of the last keeper at Portsmouth Harbor Light. She passed away at 103 in 2005. She's 100 or 101 in this picture. And she wrote a classic book called The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife. And you see here with Sally's book there on the history of Boston Light. And that same year on the right, that's in the mess hall, the cafeteria at Coast Guard Station Portsmouth Harbor. And from left to right, that is Bill Wincapaw III, the grandson of the original Flying Santa, Connie Small, and Santa Dave Waldrop, I believe. Connie remembered Bill Wincapaw the original Flying Santa, so it was neat for everybody that she got to meet Bill Wincapaw III, and he was thrilled to meet her. In 2004, we had a big event at the Coast Guard Station in Boston. And in the upper right there, this is for the 75th anniversary of the flights. In the upper right is the board of directors and some of the helicopter pilots, and Coast Guard Admiral Dave Pekoski, who was in charge of the district at that time. Dale Hardy, the pilot I mentioned, is actually holding the plaque there in that picture up top. Sally Snowman is over toward the right, and there's Lorraine Todd, the pilot, still with that same nose on. So that was a great event. On the lower left here, that is Laurie Newmeyer, who was the director of the Hull Lifesaving Museum at that time. And that is Ed McCabe. You saw him earlier with his black beard that didn't turn white until Christmas Eve. Well, I guess it stayed white one of those Christmas Eves. So finally he had a beard that was the right color, and he did actually take part in one of the flights a few years ago, and that's Admiral Dave Pekoski there again. And you see that plaque there that was created to honor Bill Wincapaw, and that was actually put on display at the Maine Lighthouse Museum in Rockland some years ago, and that again is the late Mr. Lighthouse Ken Black on the left there, and Bill Wincapaw III unveiling the plaque there. So there is an exhibit on the history of the Flying Santa at the Maine Lighthouse Museum. Brian Tagg received an honor from the Coast Guard, a citation for his countless hours and years of devotion to these flights. He's being given the citation by Santa there, and to Brian's left, our right there, with the Santa hat on and the blue Coast Guard uniform, that is John Roberts, who at that time was the officer in charge at Station Portsmouth Harbor, and he has flown as Santa a number of times in recent years, so he's another important part of the Santa program. And the man on the right was Captain McPherson, who was in charge of the district out of Portland, South Portland, Maine. I'm going to play you, I'm getting very close to the end here. I'm going to play you a video clip. This is from news in Connecticut, CT Now it's called. And this is a really nice segment on the Flying Santa that sums it up pretty well. So it's a couple of minutes long. I'll go ahead and play it. No, it's not what it is. Again, I apologize. I'll skip that one I just started to show. Again, I had to make some last-second changes here. But here's the clip I just mentioned, so here we go.
The sound is glittering as little children wait patiently, breathlessly anticipating the arrival of a Yuletide legend. And then, in a flash, he appears out of the clouds and zooms past Stratford Point Lighthouse.
It was unbelievable. My son was so excited to see the chopper come in with Santa Claus.
Forget Dasher and Dancer. Good old St. Nick is flying in style aboard a very small and agile helicopter.
It was pretty cool how they circled around, and, you know, the kids just went nuts. They loved it.
From his high-tech sleigh, he can see welcoming waves and big smiles. So he descends as the breeze blows like crazy, creating flurries of gleeful excitement.
Windy, it looked like a tornado.
After a year of being nice, not naughty, the kids see Flying Santa step out of the chopper, ready to make their Christmas dreams come true.
Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane.
This all dates back to 1929, when a floatplane pilot named William Wincapaw started literally dropping sacks of presents from the sky onto the grounds of coastal beacons so that the families of lighthouse keepers could have gifts and supplies for the holidays.
So he figured it was a pretty lonely existence out there at Christmas, and he wanted to go out and give them packages of coffee, candy, magazines, books, and flew over on Christmas Day.
When lighthouses became automated, the tradition changed but remained just as special. Now, 82 years later, Flying Santa honors the families of Coast Guard personnel, our current heroes of the waters.
They're out there doing their job every day, and this is our way of saying thanks for what they do.
This modern-day Flying Santa visits 33 lighthouses and Coast Guard stations in 3 days, delivering presents to more than 700 children from Maine to New York.
Just a great appreciation that they recognize us and everything, and all the kids, and, you know, all of us out here coming together as, you know, one big family.
And the children's faces clearly show the magic of the season.
Oh, he is so excited. Like, now he believes in Santa Claus. something he'll never forget.
Feeling like it's cool and awesome.
For goodness sake, don't feel bad for Rudolph and Prancer.
No, the reindeer rest up for Christmas, so we don't want to wear them out.
Santa is full of energy as his whirlybird slowly lifts off, bound for many more merry moments. A beautiful nautical tradition full of volunteerism, gratitude, and good cheer. The perfect sentiments for Christmas time.
There's nothing commercial about it. I mean, we're here doing our job as a gesture of appreciation for what the Coast Guard does, and we're happy to do it.
That's Mommy Minute.
Merry Christmas!
Sarah Cody, Fox, Connecticut.
And by the way, I'm going to come out of screen sharing. I was just going to say the man you saw flying the helicopter in that clip was Evan Weil, who lives in Beverly, Mass., and he owns the helicopter. He has donated his helicopter and his services as a pilot a number of times, so I wanted to mention him as well. So I have come out of screen sharing, as you can see, and there's Mina. Hi.
Hello.
And I'm always relieved when I do these presentations. I'm always relieved to come back and see that there's still somebody here. I'm not just sitting here by myself.
Oh, no, you have many people in the audience, and some really wonderful comments have gone on. I think there's a retired flying Santa in the audience, and Ralph says the same thing I do, that this is such a wonderful tradition. Thank you for all of their sacrifice. Dolly, now that I know a little bit more about you, I'm so excited that you're here. So let's get into some questions. Although, Jeremy, you had a few for Dolly during your talk. I was wondering if you wanted to go through anything that you wanted to ask her or have her illuminate for us.
Well, let's see. Did you make notes, Dolly? Because I'm not sure I did. But I sorry. Go ahead. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Dolly.
So you haven't been able to hear all those obnoxious things I've been saying.
I told you to keep your mic muted unless you wanted to heckle me. So I guess you forgot to unmute yourself, but you were heckling me anyway.
But I just wanted to say that I've been a flying Santa by plane and by helicopter. I've gotten to be the elf, and the elf. Well, first of all, I hated the plane. Every year I was in the plane, I got sick. It was awful. But I knew we were doing something wonderful, so you go up and down and around and around and around and around. But when it was time to go by helicopter, I was still nervous. And the pilot, the first year I went up was Evan. And when I landed, I said, "This is like a magic carpet ride." And he loved that. But it was something. I also wanted to say, when I met Simon for the first time, I had brought an old flying Santa hat of my dad's, and I was wearing that in the picture. But she touched it, and we both felt this electricity. It was kind of strange, but pretty special, because I had known of her for a long time, but we never actually had met, as you said.
Yeah.
And she was pretty wonderful.
She was. I'll just interject there that she and I wrote a book together called Everyday Heroes, True Story of the Lighthouse Family, that has a detailed version of this whole Flying Santa episode. And it was that whole thing was so central to her, in her life. She could never say enough good about the Flying Santa, about your dad, and how much that meant to her. It was.
Yeah, she said that her mother made the mistake of telling her that the Flying Santa was coming sometime in October. So every time a plane flew over, she would say, "Is that my Flying Santa? Is that my Flying Santa?" And then when the day finally came and he dropped the 3 packages, and one landed in the pond and one landed on the ground and the other landed on the rocks.
Yeah.
Her doll was in the one that landed on the rocks.
Yeah, but it had a really happy ending.
Yes.
And there is a children's book called Love from the Sky, the true story of Simon and the Flying Santa, that you can buy at flyingsanta.org. I haven't mentioned the website. But and I also haven't mentioned the fact that every year there's a different stuffed animal. And I think that people look really closely on one of the bookshelves behind me. Next to Popeye, there's one of those Flying Santa animals. that always has like a hoodie on with Flying Santa on it. You can buy some of those on the website, and the children's book Love from the Sky. And I think Everyday Heroes, the book with Simon, also is on there.
You can probably also get this sweatshirt.
Yes, yes, very good. Nice, you're a perfect model. So yeah, of course, yeah, you can buy those as well, and hats, baseball caps. Yeah. So Dolly, I kind of interrupted you there, I think.
No, I think that was it. Just that, going from lighthouse keepers when they were so lonely and so isolated to now helping the Coast Guard. That's pretty special too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's all part of the same
And
same tradition.
Brian Tague has really done an excellent job. And I don't know why, because he gets nothing from it except
Right.
joy.
Well, that was true of your father too. It's just tradition of selflessness, really. And I also, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to let people know if you have questions to put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your screen. I have opened up the chat so you all can chat with each other. As I mentioned, some people had some really great comments. If you want to now make them available to everyone. Jeremy, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that another thing I haven't said is that you, Dolly, and your family in general have been so supportive of the program, and also the Wincapaw family have been very supportive as well. So that's important too. And that we're all a family basically. Everybody has been involved with it. So
yes, my daughter has been an elf. Both my grandsons have been elves.
So, and you all
not bad.
How can you become an elf? Like, what is the process? Like, do you have to apply somewhere?
It's a long, long process.
Yeah, well, Dolly's paid her dues to be an elf. Yeah, I see there are some questions that I can see. Some good questions. We'll start with, I guess, with.
Yeah, a bunch of people, maybe both want to answer this, want to know how far up the plane has to be, when they drop the packages, because, things could break, they go on the rocks, things like that. So how do you, is there some guidance about how low to be?
Yeah, I'll just read the way she worded the question. How high above the ground were the packages dropped? How were they packed so they didn't break upon hitting the ground? Dolly, you're the expert. You packed a few of them yourself.
Yes, we had in there cigars and cigarettes when they were okay for you, chewing gum, pens and pencils, balloons, candy, a doll, sunglasses, and some not too smart company donated ribbon candy.
Yeah.
Which was not put in the package. We handed that out when we landed, because we had to land periodically to have to get fuel. But they were all wrapped in newspaper and then something called Excelsior, and then brown wrapping paper so that they would all float. And then my dad wrote on the outside, F for family, S for stag, and D for dog. And the one of the pictures that you showed from the past, when we were all sitting on top of one of the planes, there's either my mother or I am holding a package that says Cuddy Hunk. So he would write on them if there were very special ones that had to be gone that way.
Yeah.
But Dolly, you said that you were a little bit of a nervous flyer. So did it make you more nervous to have to go low and jump things out of a window?
It was just more my stomach that was not happy. But I would have said we were so close to the ground, it was ridiculous, but I'm sure it was not that low. It depended on the weather too, because it was always windy and, you had to be really careful.
Yeah.
And he'd fly around the first time to let people know that they were coming. And then again, to drop a package, maybe another one, and then again around to make sure that they'd gotten it, because sometimes when it landed in the water, he'd drop yet another one.
Mm-hmm. And this was before bubble wrap and things like that. So things weren't as secure, maybe.
They did
bubble wrap would come in handy.
I know. So Eileen wants to know, and you mentioned this, Dolly, just now about the weather. How often were the deliveries affected by the weather? Did they ever have to not do it?
Yeah, we had. There were snowstorms that made you not be able to go that day. We went for originally it was 3 to 5 days, I only had to go for one day, usually the one that went to Rockland, Maine, because that's where our relatives were. And then as time went on, the planes got faster and things were done faster. And there were less lighthouses. And at the very end, when my dad was doing it, there were more regulations, and he was very concerned and angry that he couldn't fly as low as he always had been able to. And he was afraid that he wasn't going to be able to get any of the targets. There were some FAA regulations that he was not happy with.
Mhm.
So
Did he know? Did they know? Like, did they know who was at each lighthouse so they could make specific gifts for them?
he, to some extent, but now the flying Santa, when you're the elf, you have to help because Santa's glasses fog up. And each package has the name and age of the child.
Mm.
Brian does a great job with that.
Yeah.
So that you can see who's, and Santa does a great job too. He'll say something like, Jeremy, I think you have to do a little bit more studying at school. But, the Santas are fabulous. They really are.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, they really are. I just wanted to interject something about the weather. Dolly, you might remember more about this, but it was sometime in the 1960s, I believe, that one year the plane was flying near Boone Island Light, and he threw a package out, and it got caught in the tail mechanism of the plane.
Yes, on the rudder.
And what's that?
In the rudder. That's what he called
Right.
it.
So he couldn't steer. The pilot or had very little steering ability. So they made an emergency landing at Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, and everything was okay. But from what I gathered, that was like the closest. Were you in the plane that day? You were, right?
I don't think I was. I don't know. I know we had to make an emergency landing, but that was for something else. That was because it was really rough, and not only I was sick, but my husband was sick too.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were saying that before, I think I told you before, Dolly, I can't fly in small planes and take pictures of lighthouses or anything like that. I learned that does not agree with me.
Does not work.
But helicopters, I love flying in helicopters, so I totally
the
agree.
helicopter's great.
Yeah, they are like magic carpets. Yeah,
they are.
Yeah.
I feel like we all have to take magic carpet rides. And quick question for you, Jeremy. You had mentioned two websites, the Santa one, which I did put on in the chat, but there was another one.
Did I mention another one?
I Love Flying or something like that.
That wasn't me.
No?
No, I mentioned the Flying Santa website, flyingsanta.org. I don't think I mentioned any other website.
Okay. All right. Then
I mentioned ctnow.com. That was who did that video at the end that I played. That might have been the other one. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just
maybe I might have been, in an altered state when I mentioned another website. I don't know.
Okay, I heard something, but I might have been like daydreaming. So JA wants to know that. Well, first, love the presentation. Have the Flying Santas been copied in any other country?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there are Flying Santas in some other parts of the country. I think there's one in the Northwest. I know every year they do a Flying Santa event, just a one-day thing at Fire Island Lighthouse in New York. There's things like that, but nothing that compares to this long tradition. And I would imagine there's some sort of Flying Santas who, do come in by helicopter in other countries as well. But I can't give you any specifics. So that's a good question.
I can just imagine like in England with the rocky shores, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I went to England a couple of years ago and went to a lighthouse on the White Cliffs of Dover. What a great place for the Santa to land there on the cliff would have been pretty amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Joe says about the website, how can individuals volunteer with this group? I see you can make financial donations and purchase sweatshirts and t-shirts when they come back in stock.
Yeah.
Dolly, they're out of stock? What?
Well, I could sell you this for
$1
million.
It's worth more because you've been wearing it. It's especially valuable. Yeah.
No, I went on one of the Flying Santa cruises that you used to have, and somebody wanted my hat, and I didn't have any, and I said sure, and they paid me more for it than it was worth. I don't know if the Flying Santa hats were gone, but I said, well, here, you can have mine, but it was
it's like
odd.
like buying a uniform that Michael Jordan wore or something like that.
That would be cool. I know we have a couple of.
Yeah.
I know we have a couple of kids.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm sorry, I
sorry.
was just going to say about volunteering. I would just contact Brian. You know, the email and phone number are on there. Brian is very busy this time of year, and it would be too late to do anything this year. But I know there have been like wrapping parties at the Coast Guard station in Boston and that sort of thing. So there very well may be opportunities to help out. But Brian's the person to contact about
And
that.
if
But
not
probably
this year,
wait until after
maybe,
Christmas. Yeah,
then maybe next year.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm going to definitely contact him to find out how I can be an elf. That just sounds like so much fun. I know there's a couple of kids in the audience, maybe more, but Drew wants to know what Mr. Snow's favorite place was to fly to.
Well, his favorite lighthouse was Minot's Light, and that was very important to both him and to my mother, because do you know the flash of Minot's Light? Oh,
I
Mina, I'm
do.
so disappointed. Go ahead, Jeremy. You tell her.
I
One,
think he's told me and I have forgotten.
I think I've talked about it in at least one of my presentations with you. 1, 4, 3. One flash, pause. 4 flashes, pause. 3 flashes.
And what does that
And
stand for,
and
Brian?
what did people decide that stood for? Any guess,
Go ahead,
Nina?
Brian. She's not going to get it.
I'm not Brian. I'm Jeremy.
I mean, Jeremy. Oh, that's another story.
My brain
One,
is
four,
mush.
three.
I know
People.
you
It
told
didn't.
me.
Oh, look at the hearts that are going up. Come on.
It didn't actually stand for anything, but people decided it stood for "I love you." I think that's why the hearts are going up. Yeah, because people knew. Yeah, and so it's the "I love you" light. Yeah,
The lover's light.
the
It's like
lover's
that.
light.
It's
Yeah.
like that teenage thing that they're like 6, 7. Doesn't mean anything, but to the kids saying it, I guess.
I
But
don't even know
I
that
love
one.
that.
It does.
I love
Yeah,
you.
kind of like
Um,
that. Yeah.
so
But I just want to say, I'm sorry, as far as favorite lighthouse, Dolly, one time I asked your mother what her favorite lighthouse was. Do you know what her answer was to that?
Owl's Head.
Owl's Head, yeah. And I think
Yes.
that was partly because they knew the keepers there, they would visit there
Right.
fairly often, and that just meant something to her. So it's a beautiful place, yeah. That's in Midcoast, Maine, near Rockland. Yeah.
people do know the 143 stands for I love you.
Well,
Um, I love this one. My children were gifted stuffed beavers on a flying Santa cruise, and as we approached Beaver Tail Light, that was a nice touch. I wanted to know though, is everything donated? You know, the money, the gifts, you know, for all of this project, or is there a fund for it?
There is a fund. The helicopters, the pilots, and everything, that's all donated, but the
Or it
presents
had
are paid for.
It
As I
had
was saying, Brian shops hard for the best toys at the best price, you know, and sometimes companies give a break and stuff like that, but the presents are paid for. To make it more uniform, if you know, I think the feeling is that if they ask for donations, the presents would be kind of all over the place, but it's more controlled that way. So the biggest expense is the toys. There are other expenses, but if the helicopters and pilots weren't paid for, that would be make it virtually impossible because that's so expensive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dolly, were you going to say something about that too?
I was thinking it, but I didn't know that you could read my mind. I know when my dad went, he paid for almost everything. And Jeremy has a great clip of my mother saying, we could have had a very nice house, but think of how much more fun it was to give it to the lighthouse keepers. So,
yeah.
Your
To see them running out.
Yes, I didn't want to. Yes. Go ahead. You can keep going.
I was going to say your parents sound amazing, not just for like what they did, but like their attitude about it.
Yeah. It was a pretty special way to grow up. And I got to do all these other things with my dad too.
Mm-hmm.
He took trips to all exciting places. He dove off of Minot's Light. That's another thing from Jeremy. You Google lighthouse dive, right? Edward Rowe Snow.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking to see if I could actually play that clip. I don't think we have time for me to find it and play it. But anyway, yeah, on YouTube, it's on my personal YouTube channel. But yeah, if you get on YouTube and search for Edward Rowe Snow dive lighthouse, words to that effect. You'll find it, and it's from 1962 on his 60th birthday, Dolly, right?
I don't
You
know.
were, well, you were right there, right in the doorway when he dove out.
And that was one time that he did.
Yeah,
And that was a surprise.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I know if you don't mind me quoting you, you told me that's when you said that's when I knew my father was crazy. Is a way,
yes.
but in a good way. If I say that, I always say you meant it in a
In
good
a
way.
loving way.
Right, right. But yeah, it's pretty amazing on his 60th birthday.
He sounds like it was very adventurous, let's say that.
He
It's
was.
putting it lightly. Yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time and out of questions, but people have really loved this talk. And I so appreciate you being here, Dolly. You have brought so much personal, like just that personal touch to the entire conversation. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're not feeling well, so I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Jeremy, once again for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dolly. So glad you could be here.
So am I. Take
And
care.
Jeremy, you know I'll be in touch for our next one. I'm thinking like Lighthouses of Cape Cod, which we have not done yet.
I can do that. I have done
Awesome.
that. That'd be great.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, because normally at this time we do something about the paranormal, haunted lighthouses, but this time we decided on Santa. So I
Yeah.
loved it. This is wonderful.
Was it 3 haunted talks I did for you? I did more haunted lighthouses and even more haunted lighthouses.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'd be reaching pretty far into the basket to do any more, but
We
it
could
might
go
be
back to the beginning. I mean, some of those were pretty good.
we could cycle back to that. Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely be in touch. But thank you all for your enthusiasm that you've been here and hanging out and asking wonderful questions and really, really great comments of your own experiences of this. So I love that everybody was so engaged with this. And Jeremy, Dolly, have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you, Mina.
So much.
Good night, everybody.